and welcome to healthyhouseplants.com, where we teach you all about gardening in the great indoors. If you'd like to support our show, please use our Amazon affiliate link below. Today we are doing a plant care video on Chinese money plant, botanically known as Pilea peperomioides. This is also known as the friendship plant because of how it came to be, and I do have a video on that, on its history as well. So you can take a look at that if you want to know about the history of the plant, this gorgeous plant. It's a really fun plant. I love the roundness of the leaves. You don't find a lot of round leaves in nature, in plants, and this one has those really cool round leaves. Hence the popular name money plant, right? Because they do look like coins. They've also been called the UFO plant, I guess maybe because they look like spaceships, and the pancake plant. So there you go. Lots of references in terms of the roundness of the leaves. So anyway, as mentioned, this is a video on how to grow them and how to have really good luck keeping them healthy and happy in your indoor garden. So the first thing is lighting, as it is often for many plants. This plant thrives in medium to bright indirect light, okay? So you don't want it in real dark areas. It's not going to do well for you if you do that. Medium light, well, medium light, it's nice light in that area. And bright indirect light. You don't want to put them in a really hot window like a western window and even a southern window at certain times of the year, because you could burn the plant foliage. I have a video on that link below, so what to do if you do. But so to prevent that, a medium, bright indirect light, if you have it near a western window, southern window, just a few feet back from that window, or sheer curtains on the window, something to protect it. Now, if you are in a space that is very dark, dim, etc., you're going to need to provide your money plant with some good full spectrum lighting. There are lots of full spectrum lighting products on the market today. I do have links below for you. You can attach them to the side of your table. There's little units that you can put the plant underneath if it's small, or even for bigger ones. So there's lots of really good products. No reason not to light your Chinese money plant up sufficiently so it does well. So the plant can adapt to maybe a medium low light, but it will become leggy. It's going to grow fewer limbs, basically less foliage, right? So it's just not going to look as good. And when you do stress a plant with not enough light, you open that plant up to pests and diseases. So just do what you can to give it as much light as it needs. Okay, soil. So the soil for your Pilea peperomioides, you want it rich yet well draining, which is what a lot of houseplants like. So you want a high quality organic potting mix that is peat based or core based. That's best, because those peat or core will retain water, while at the same time you want some draining agents such as perlite, and I do have a perlite product linked below for you. So to keep the plant also, the soil also well draining, so it doesn't, you don't want soggy soil, because soggy soil will lead to root rot. However, they do like their water. They are fairly good water consumers, and so that's why you want the soil to be able to retain water. I have put a couple links below there for you of some potting mixes that I like as well. Okay, so watering, as just mentioned, this plant is a fairly good drinker, especially if it's happy and growing well in the right lighting situation, etc. So you want to keep the soil moist but not soggy. Always make sure there's good drainage holes in the pot so that the water drains out. The bottom of the pot is not sitting in water at all times. If you're using moisture meter, you want to water this plant when it's about on the 4. You don't want to go into the 3, which is dry. You could lose some branching, some leaves on this plant, so be careful not to drought it. It can take some drought, but it will, after a time of a lot of drought, start to really not look good for you. So 4, as mentioned on the moisture meter, is perfect. That is still some moisture in the soil and not yet dry, but not overly wet as well. Okay, so temperature and humidity for this. Oh, and one other thing about watering the Chinese money plant and any other house plants is to always use warm to tepid water. Always warm to tepid water, room temperature water when you're watering your money plant. Okay, temperature and humidity. The average household temperature and humidity are usually fine for Pilea peperomioides. Okay, so if you want to talk average, most generally speaking, you're going to be talking about between 65 and 75 degrees would be an average, and that's Fahrenheit. So if you're in that range, you're pretty good. What you want to avoid doing is exposing the Chinese money plant to 50 degrees or lower, because they will balk in that sort of temperature for you, and that would also be Fahrenheit, because they just aren't. They're not from a very cold area, so you need to keep them warmer than 50 degrees. So if you're around 60 degrees, 60 to 75 degrees, that's a really good area for them to be in. If not, you'll want to place them in a warmer area of the house and definitely keep them away from drafty areas. Okay, so fertilizing your Pilea peperomioides. They benefit from monthly fertilization, basically spring through early fall. You can stop feeding during the winter months and resume again in the spring months. Use a well-balanced, all-purpose organic fertilizer. I do have a fertilizer product linked below. You want to avoid fertilizing them, as most of your houseplants, or all of your houseplants, as I generally say, with chemical fertilizers, because chemical fertilizers are much stronger and they can easily burn plant roots, which will then result in things like burned the brown leaf tips and even crispy burns around the edges of the leaves. And then if you do enough of over fertilizing with chemical fertilizers, as mentioned, it will harm roots, and then when you harm roots, you have root dieback, and then you have too much wet soil, and then it can lead to root rot. So there's just a lot of things that could occur. So your best bet is to go with an organic fertilizer. Organic fertilizers have the low NPK ratio on their packaging. For instance, mine is 332. So you want to look for numbers that are low, 5, to be on the safe side, 5 or lower on the packaging, or around that. And if you do have any questions about fertilizer, I'm very happy to answer them. So please ask in the comment section below, or anything else about the Chinese money plant or anything about houseplants. Okay. So, and also whenever you fertilize a Chinese money plant and all your houseplants, make sure to water first, then fertilize, and then water again. And if you're using a dry fertilizer, you want to put it down at the root zone, and I have a video on how to fertilize with dry fertilizer as well. Okay, the potting and repotting of the Pilea peperomioides. So when you're caring for this plant and you're doing a good job caring for this plant, it's a pretty quick grower. So you will often need to repot about once a year. If it's slower growing, you will not repot unless it needs it. I have a repotting playlist. Okay, so when you do repot, you need to use, as mentioned prior in the soil, a rich yet well-draining soil. And make sure to pot into the correct size pot. As I always mention, you want 2/3 plant to 1/3 pot ratio when you're done planting. You do not want to have a lot of pot and a little bit of root and a little bit of plant, because that will set you up for root rot. It is like planting in a lake, because that soil remains moist. These plants will do well in plastic, ceramic, terracotta pots. They're not real picky about the type of pot. Just keep in mind that if you use a terracotta pot, you will be watering more frequently because terracotta pots are porous and the water evaporates more quickly from them. The common pests and diseases for these plants. So they're pretty pest-free in general, especially if they're healthy. Occasionally you may see some mealybugs or some scale on them. And if so, potentially spider mites as well, although spider mites like dry conditions, so if that tends to happen when you're not watering enough. So all of these pests can be treated. There's various things you can do to treat them. Mealybugs, alcohol, isopropyl alcohol spraying on them, scale and spider mites, neem oil works really well for them as well. Link below for a video on the neem oil and also on dealing with the mealybugs, etc. Okay, so there you have it for keeping your Chinese money plant happy and healthy. And the last thing I would suggest with all houseplants is to talk to your plant and tell your plant how happy you are about how well he or she is growing for you. That always helps as well. Thank you for stopping by today. Please leave any comments about any indoor gardening tutorials you'd like to see. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. And please check the bell if you'd like to be notified when new videos are released.